Welcome everyone. This video is the discussion prompt for the second School Improvement Council discussion related to the implementation of your school improvement plan. During this video, we will provide an overview of the coming year and instructions for how to participate in this month's discussion. My name is Sue Reynolds and I am president of the American Student Achievement Institute. Okay, so let's begin with that overview of the year. So in the first semester of the school year, our focus is on the implementation of the interventions that are in your school improvement plan that your council helped to develop last year. So we started out in September by just updating all the organizational structure, your steering team, and then later in September, we did a kickoff of your interventions. So right now, all of your interventions that you had planned for the first semester should be off and running, and hopefully they're being implemented fully and with integrity. So what we want to do now is just to take a quick look at those interventions to make sure that everything is up and running smoothly, that the interventions are in place, and that they're having the desired impact. And if they're not having the desired impact, then we want to look at, okay, let's make some adjustments to those interventions. Then second semester, we'll begin doing the annual update of your school improvement plan. So we'll be preparing your implementation plan for next school year. So first semester is totally different than second semester. First semester is all about the implementation of your current plan, and second semester is all about creating next year's plan. Okay, so as we go into second semester and start planning next year's plan, the big question is, given who we are now and the new student data that we have, does our school improvement plan still make sense? So during the second semester, you'll be updating your goals based on who you are now and your current data. You'll update your goals. You'll update your root causes, the items that are interfering with your goals. And then you'll update interventions. And finally, at the end of the second semester, we'll begin preparing to implement the interventions that you've planned for next year. But today's discussion is again to look at the implementation of this year's interventions and to see if they're being implemented with integrity and if they're having the desired impact. So let's look now at today's discussion. And actually today's discussion that you'll participate in is not really a discussion, it's actually a survey. So what we want to do is in this survey is to get each of your council members' opinion about these three questions. So for each intervention, we're going to ask you, is the intervention being fully implemented from your perspective? Is the intervention having the desired impact on adult practices from your perspective? And then also, what adjustments are needed? So for some of you, if you're community members on some of the interventions, you may not know if it's being fully implemented. And there will also be an option where you can just say, I'm not sure. But we do want to get both educators' opinions about whether or not the interventions are being implemented fully and well as community members' opinions about that. Okay, so let's look at then how to participate in this month's discussion. So you are already watching this video, so I know that you have logged into this page. And there's really just three steps that we need to do. One is to watch the video that you're watching now, and after we get this recorded, it will appear in this box in the middle of this page. You've obviously found it because you're watching it. Then the next thing to do is to review the interventions that your school has planned to implement this year. So just in number 2, if you just click interventions, that lists each of the interventions. So you can see the first one is 7th grade ratios unit. It talks about how you plan to evaluate that intervention, what the professional development was for that intervention, and the ratios, in this case, more about the development, and what the departments are going to do, what resources are going to be needed, and then it comes down, if you keep scrolling down, to the next intervention. So you can kind of do a refresher on the interventions that you had planned to implement for this year by going to that page. Okay, so then after you've kind of reviewed everything, then what we'd like you to do is just take this quick survey. So basically for each of the interventions, we're going to ask a series of questions. So let's just look, if you were doing this for the first interventions in our demo school, which is the 7th grade ratios unit. First of all, there's a description. If you want the full description, you can click and I'm sorry, if you want to make that description appear, you can click that, or you can click it and it will disappear. So you can read about the intervention here as well. Then we tell you in your school who's responsible for implementing that intervention, what the intervention dates are. It may be to be determined at this point, but there may be dates in here. We like it when there's dates in there. The item that's going to be counted for the evaluation. So in this case, we're going to count the percentage of 7th grade math teachers who include a ratios unit in their curriculum. The baseline data right now, there are no 7th grade teachers doing that, and what our target data is, we want 100% of the students to, or of the teachers to be doing that. So, and just as a reminder, on interventions that are being evaluated with data, the data will always be expressed as the percentage of an adult group who is changing a practice that we think then will have an impact on kids. So the evaluation data for your interventions, again, is always going to be the percentage of some adult group that's implementing a desired practice. Okay, so then when we get down to the questions, the first question is, from your observation, is the intervention, and then the name of the intervention, 7th grade ratios unit, being implemented? And so let's say I'm a 7th grade teacher, maybe a 7th grade math teacher. I'm going to say yes. And then what evidence do you have? I have attended math department meetings where this was developed and where we have come back and discussed the implementation of the ratios units. So you're saying your opinion, whether or not you think that intervention was implemented, and then you're documenting why you feel that way. What have you observed that made you think that? If you are a community member, you may just check, I'm not sure. Yeah, so we can go from there. And you'll notice that as you're answering these questions, you're also going to be able to see kind of a tally of what other people have said as the data is brought into the system. The next question is asking you to look at the impact. So the instructions are review what is being counted for evaluation purposes. So if I forget, I can go just scroll right back up there. Oh yeah, the percentage of 7th grade math teachers who include a ratios unit. So review what is being counted, and from your observation, is the implementation impacting the adult practice? So again, if I'm a teacher, if I'm that 7th grade math teacher, I'm going to say yes, and then I'm going to write why I think that the adults, in this case the 7th grade math teachers, are changing their practices. It may be that question 3 and the question above it is are very similar. So you may be answering saying the same thing for your evidence twice, but it may be slightly different too, depending on how the school has worded the intervention. So okay, so I would write my evidence in here. Or, I might say no, and then I'm going to explain why I don't think that this has been implemented. And it may be something like, I'm a 7th grade math teacher, and we had planned to implement this during the 2nd semester, so we haven't gotten to it yet. Or it might be, I'm a 7th grade math teacher, and we've not done any of the things that we were planning to do. So, yeah, so you're just giving some evidence. If you, again, if you're a community member, you might be able to say things like, my 7th grade student brought home homework that had to do with ratios, calculating ratios. So just what are you observing or not observing that you think you should be observing that make you think that this intervention was implemented and had an impact? Then the next question asks you, should we be making any adjustments in this intervention? So the question is, do you think the implementation of the intervention could be improved? Yes. And then if yes, what could be done? So again, if I'm that 7th grade math teacher, I might type in something like, we really need to meet again as a math department to talk about the implementation of those ratios now that we've done it, and to really debrief about how it went and where we could make improvements. Or if you're a parent, you might say, I noticed that my child only had one activity sheet to do where they were asked to calculate ratios, and I really think it would have been good for my child to have that repeated a couple days in a row so they really could get a grasp of that content. So again, we're just looking for everybody's ideas. And again, if you're community members, don't worry about, talking in education-ese. We're just wanting from your perspective and your words what you think about how things are being implemented so far. Okay, and then finally we give you a box where you can just write in whatever else you want to say about the implementation of this intervention. Okay, I do want to scroll down to one other example. In the next intervention, the second intervention that's listed here, you can see that the only thing that you've been given is the person responsible and the implementation date, which in this case is to be determined. So we've not given you what's going to be counted. And that's because the school, to not go beyond its capacity in terms of time, has decided, and the council, you all have decided last year, to not evaluate with data every single intervention. So you've really kind of focused your time and energy on just evaluating probably your big bang for the buck interventions. So if that's the case, you'll notice that we've not given you any data up here, and then you're not asked to evaluate the impact of the intervention. We're just wanting to know, do you see it being implemented, and what adjustments would you make? So, okay, so that is it. And so what we need you to do now that you're finished watching this video is to go ahead and go to step 2, review the interventions, and then begin the survey of your perspective in terms of the implementation of those interventions. So that sounds very good. That is this activity will conclude the first semester, which has focused on the implementation of the interventions that you planned for this year. The next time we participate in a video with you, it'll be to discuss how you're going to tweak this year's plan so that it makes sense for next year. It may be dropping some interventions, adding goals, tweaking goals, but we'll focus on all of that second semester. So right now, what we want to do, though, is to make sure those interventions are in place and everything is going well. So, okay, thank you so much for participating. And again, if you have any questions about any of this, on your screen right above the video is who to contact within your local community to ask questions about this activity. So, okay, thanks so much.